The aroma of fresh herbs and sizzling garlic filled the small kitchen of Sabores da Vida, where Isabella Martinez worked her culinary magic. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she plated another order of her signature dish, pan-seared sea bass with Mediterranean herbs. The restaurant, though modest in size, had become her sanctuary over the past 5 years. "Table 7 is still waiting for their appetizers, chef," called out Marco, her trusted sous chef, his voice barely audible over the kitchen's controlled chaos. Isabella wiped her brow with her sleeve, quickly adjusting her chef's coat. 2 minutes on those croquettes, Marco. Keep table 12's main course warm." The evening rush was in full swing, and despite the restaurant's financial struggles, the dining room remained consistently full. Isabella had built a loyal following through her innovative fusion of Mediterranean and Latin American cuisines. Each dish told a story, carrying memories of her grandmother's cooking and her own culinary adventures across the world. As she finished garnishing a plate with microgreens, Maria, her head waitress, burst through the kitchen doors, her eyes wide with excitement. "Chef, you need to see who just walked in." "Maria, unless Gordon Ramsay himself has decided to grace us with his presence, it can wait," Isabella replied, not looking up from her work. "It's Karim al-Rashid," Maria whispered urgently, "the billionaire developer. He's here with his entire entourage." Isabella's hands froze momentarily over the plate she was preparing. Everyone in the city knew about Karim al-Rashid, the mysterious Middle Eastern magnate who had transformed the city's skyline with his architectural ventures. His presence in any restaurant was enough to make headlines in the local papers. "Treat him like any other guest," Isabella instructed, though her heart had begun to race. "What did he order?" "He asked for your tasting menu, chef. Whole 7 courses." Isabella took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. This could be the opportunity she'd been waiting for. Her restaurant had been struggling to stay afloat for months, with mounting debts threatening to destroy everything she'd built. A positive review from someone of al-Rashid's influence could change everything. She personally oversaw each course that left the kitchen, ensuring every element was executed to perfection. Through the kitchen window, she caught glimpses of him. Tall, distinguished, with silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. His expression remained impassive as he tasted each dish, offering no hint of his thoughts. As the final course was being prepared, her famous cardamom-infused chocolate souffle with saffron cream, Maria returned to the kitchen, looking nervous. "Chef, Mr. al-Rashid would like to speak with you." Isabella removed her apron, smoothed her chef's coat, and walked into the dining room with her head held high. As she approached his table, Karim al-Rashid stood, towering over her with his impressive height. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel as though he could see right through her carefully maintained professional facade. "Miss Martinez," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent that added warmth to his formal tone, "your cuisine is intriguing. You've managed to create something quite unique here." "Thank you, Mr. al-Rashid. I'm honored you enjoyed the meal. Please sit." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. His security detail had moved to a respectful distance, but their presence remained palpable. "I have a proposition for you." Isabella sat down, her curiosity piqued. The restaurant had quieted, other diners trying to discreetly observe their interaction. "I'm looking for a private chef," he continued, his fingers tracing the rim of his water glass. "Someone who can bring creativity and soul to my table. Your food tells stories, Miss Martinez. That's a rare gift. I'm flattered, but I have my restaurant, which is struggling financially," he interrupted smoothly. "Yes, I've done my research. I'm prepared to make you an offer that would not only solve those problems, but also give you creative freedom you've never experienced before. Unlimited resources, state-of-the-art facilities, and compensation that would exceed your current earnings tenfold." Isabella felt her world tilt slightly. The offer was unexpected and overwhelming. She looked around her restaurant, at the worn chairs she'd personally reupholstered, the walls she'd painted herself, the dream she'd built from nothing. "I would need time to consider such an offer," she said carefully. A slight smile touched his lips. "Of course. Take 24 hours. My card," he said, sliding a sleek business card across the table. "I look forward to your answer, Miss Martinez." As he stood to leave, he paused, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "One more thing. If you accept, be prepared. Working for me will change your life in ways you cannot imagine. The weight of his words hung in the air long after he'd departed, leaving Isabella to contemplate a decision that would indeed alter the course of her destiny forever. Isabella spent a sleepless night in her small apartment above the restaurant, Al-Rashid's business card burning a hole in her pocket. The morning sun found her sitting at her worn kitchen table, nursing her third cup of coffee, while staring at the mounting bills spread before her. "You're actually considering it, aren't you?" Antonio, her mentor and former culinary school professor, sat across from her. His weathered face showed concern as he studied her expression. He'd arrived early, responding to her desperate call for advice. "The bank won't extend our credit line anymore," Isabella admitted, pushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Last month's repairs ate through our reserves. If something else breaks—" She let the sentence hang unfinished. Antonio reached across the table, taking her hand. "Bella, my dear, sometimes the universe forces us to make difficult choices. Tell me what your heart says." "My heart?" She laughed softly. "My heart is torn in pieces. This restaurant, it's not just a business. Every recipe, every dish, carries a piece of my soul. The regulars are like family. How can I walk away from that? Who says you have to walk away forever?" Antonio's eyes twinkled. "Think of this as an apprenticeship of sorts, the kind that could open doors you never knew existed." Isabella stood, walking to the window that overlooked the street below. Early morning deliveries were arriving, vendors carrying boxes of fresh produce through the back door. Marco was already in the kitchen, preparing for the day ahead. The familiar rhythm of restaurant life played out before her, a dance she knew by heart. "There's something else," she said, turning back to Antonio. "Something about Karim al-Rashid that unsettles me. He's so intense, like he's carrying the weight of secrets I'm not sure I want to know." "Ah," Antonio smiled knowingly, "you've always been too perceptive for your own good. The wealthy always have their secrets, Bella. The question is whether those secrets will prevent you from growing into the chef you're meant to become." A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Maria entered carrying a large envelope. "This was just delivered by courier, chef. It's from Mr. Al-Rashid's office." Isabella opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a formal contract, along with photographs of what appeared to be a state-of-the-art kitchen that made her current setup look like a child's play kitchen. The salary figure made her gasp. "Mother of mercy," Antonio whispered, looking over her shoulder. "With that kind of money, you could pay off the restaurant's debts and still have enough to renovate the entire place." "There's more," Isabella said, reading further. "He's offering to keep the restaurant operational while I'm gone. His management team would oversee it, maintaining my menu and standards. I'd retain ownership and could return whenever I choose. It seems Mr. Al-Rashid has thought of everything," Antonio observed. "He must really want you in his kitchen." Isabella sat back down, overwhelmed by the possibilities before her. The contract represented more than just financial security. It was an opportunity to push her culinary boundaries, to learn and grow in ways her current situation couldn't provide. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "The car will arrive at 7 p.m. to bring you to the estate. I trust you've made your decision. K.A.R." The presumption in his message should have irritated her, but instead it sparked something else. Curiosity, perhaps even excitement. How did he know she would accept? What else did this mysterious man know? "You're going to do it, aren't you?" Antonio asked, though it wasn't really a question. Isabella picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over the keypad. "Yes," she replied simply, both to Antonio and in her text response to Al-Rashid. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. She gathered her team, explaining the situation and assuring them their jobs were secure. Marco would step up as head chef in her absence, maintaining her recipes and standards. There were tears, hugs, and promises to stay in touch. As evening approached, Isabella stood in her bedroom, packing a small suitcase. The contract had specified that all necessary chef's uniforms and equipment would be provided, so she focused on personal items. Her hands lingered over her grandmother's old recipe book, its pages stained and dog-eared from years of use. This, above all else, would come with her. At precisely 7 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up in front of the restaurant. The driver, impeccably dressed, opened the door for her. As Isabella settled into the luxurious leather seat, she caught her reflection in the window. a woman on the verge of transformation, though whether for better or worse remained to be seen. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the familiar streets of her neighborhood. In the growing darkness, they headed toward the exclusive cliffside area, where al-Rashid's mansion stood like a modern fortress against the sky. Isabella clutched her grandmother's recipe book to her chest, drawing strength from its presence. Whatever awaited her in that mansion, whatever secrets lurked behind Karim al-Rashid's intense gaze, she would face it with the same determination that had carried her through every other challenge in her life. The car wound its way up the coastal road, each turn bringing her closer to a future she could never have imagined. The gates of al-Rashid's estate parted silently, revealing a driveway that curved through meticulously maintained gardens. Isabella's breath caught as the mansion came into full view, a masterpiece of modern architecture blended with traditional Middle Eastern elements, its windows glowing like amber jewels against the darkening sky. The car came to a stop at the base of wide marble steps. Before the driver could open her door, it swung open to reveal Karim al-Rashid himself, his tall frame silhouetted against the warm light spilling from the entrance. "Welcome to your new home, Miss Martinez," he said, extending his hand to help her from the car. His touch was brief but firm, sending an unexpected current through her fingers. "It's overwhelming," Isabella admitted, taking in the grandeur of her surroundings. Water features created a gentle symphony in the background, and the air was heavy with the scent of jasmine and night-blooming flowers. "You'll adjust," he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Mrs. Hassan will show you to your quarters. I expect you in the kitchen at 6 a.m. sharp tomorrow. We have much to discuss regarding your duties." Before Isabella could respond, an elegant older woman appeared, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "This way, Miss Martinez," she said warmly, leading Isabella through the massive front doors. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than its exterior. Modern art pieces worth millions adorned walls covered in subtle geometric patterns. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors, partially covered by hand-woven Persian rugs. "Your suite is in the east wing," Mrs. Hassan explained as they walked. "Mr. al-Rashid insisted you have the rooms with the best view of the sunrise. He says it inspires creativity." Isabella's suite turned out to be larger than her entire apartment above the restaurant. A sitting room with plush furniture opened onto a bedroom with a king-sized bed draped in fine linens. The bathroom was a marvel of marble and glass, with a soaking tub that looked more like a small pool. "The kitchen is through the service corridor, but you have private access through this door." Mrs. Hassan indicated a discreet panel in the wall. "Mr. al-Rashid has arranged for your chef's uniforms. They're in the closet. Will you need help unpacking?" "No, thank you," Isabella replied, still trying to process the luxury surrounding her. "But could you tell me more about what to expect? What are Mr. al-Rashid's preferences?" Mrs. Hassan's expression became thoughtful. "He's particular, expects excellence in everything. The previous chef lasted 3 months before quitting, said the pressure was too much." She paused, studying Isabella. "But you're different, I think. There's something about you that caught his attention." After Mrs. Hassan left, Isabella explored her new domain. The closet was filled with chef's coats of the finest quality, each embroidered with her name. A small balcony offered a breathtaking view of the ocean below, waves crashing against the cliffs in a hypnotic rhythm. Unable to sleep, she decided to familiarize herself with the kitchen. Following the private access corridor, she emerged into a space that took her breath away. The kitchen was a chef's paradise, every surface gleaming stainless steel, every possible tool and appliance at her disposal. The refrigerators were walk-in, the stovetops professional grade, the knife collection worth more than her car. Impressive, isn't it? Isabella spun around to find Karim watching her from the doorway, his presence filling the space in a way that made it feel suddenly smaller. He'd removed his suit jacket, and the sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up, revealing strong forearms marked with faint scars. "It's incredible," she admitted, "though it feels a bit sterile." "Sterile?" His eyebrow arched. "Explain." "A kitchen needs soul, Mr. al-Rashid. It needs to be lived in to hold memories and mistakes and triumphs. This is beautiful, but it feels untouched." He moved closer, his steps measured. "Then perhaps that's why you're here, Miss Martinez, to bring some soul to this place." His dark eyes held hers. "And please call me Karim. We'll be working closely together." The way he said it sent a shiver down her spine. "What exactly are you expecting from me, Karim?" "Excellence, innovation, but most importantly, authenticity." He ran his finger along the pristine countertop. "I've tasted food from the finest restaurants in the world, but your cooking, it has something different, something real. I want that here in my home." "Real food comes from the heart," Isabella said. "It can't be forced or rushed." "I'm a patient man," he replied, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. "When it comes to things I truly want." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken implications. Isabella forced herself to maintain eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. "Tomorrow morning," he continued, breaking the tension, "we'll discuss the details of your position. I host frequent dinner parties for important guests. They'll expect to be impressed." He moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. The East Wing is yours to explore, but the West Wing is strictly off-limits, understand?" Isabella nodded, though her curiosity was immediately piqued. What secrets lay in the forbidden wing of this golden cage she'd willingly entered? As his footsteps faded away, Isabella remained in the kitchen, running her hands over the smooth surfaces. Tomorrow, she would begin transforming this sterile space into something alive with possibility. But tonight, in the quiet hours, she wondered if she'd made the right choice and what price she might ultimately pay for it. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity as Isabella settled into her new role. Each morning, she awoke before dawn, greeting the sun as it painted the sky in vibrant hues over the ocean. The kitchen became her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the familiar rhythms of chopping, sautéing, and seasoning. Karim proved to be as demanding as she'd anticipated. He expected nothing short of perfection, sending back dishes if they didn't meet his exacting standards. Yet there was something exhilarating about the challenge. Isabella found herself pushing her culinary boundaries, experimenting with flavor combinations she'd never dared try before. One morning, as she was preparing a new recipe for grilled octopus with saffron aioli, Karim entered the kitchen unannounced. He moved silently, observing her work without comment. Isabella felt the weight of his gaze but refused to let it rattle her concentration. "You've changed things," he finally said, gesturing to the rows of fresh herbs now growing in pots along the windowsill, the handwritten recipe cards pinned to a cork board, the well-used mortar and pestle that had belonged to her grandmother. "I told you a kitchen needs soul," she replied, not looking up from her task. "This is how I create it." He picked up one of the recipe cards, studying it. "These dishes aren't on any menu I've approved." Isabella set down her knife, turning to face him. "With all due respect, Karim, you hired me for my creativity. If you want a chef who only follows predetermined menus, I'm not the right person for this job." For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then, unexpectedly, Karim's lips curved into a small smile. "You continue to surprise me, Isabella. Very well, show me what you've been working on." Over the next hour, Isabella presented a tasting menu of her latest creations. Karim sampled each dish thoughtfully, his expression giving nothing away. When he finally spoke, his words caught her off guard. "You're holding back," he said, setting down his fork. "These dishes are good, but they lack the fire I tasted in your restaurant." "What's changed?" Isabella bristled at the criticism. "I'm adapting to your palate, to what I thought you wanted." "What I want," Karim said, his voice low and intense, "is for you to cook with the same passion that first caught my attention. Don't try to please me. Challenge me." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ahmed, Karim's personal assistant. "Sir, your 10 a.m. conference call is about to begin. And don't forget about the dinner party tonight. The Minister of Finance and his wife will be attending." Karim nodded, his demeanor shifting back to cool professionalism. "Prepare something special for tonight, Isabella. Something that tells a story." With that, he strode out of the kitchen, leaving her to contemplate his words. As Isabella began planning the evening's menu, she was interrupted by the arrival of Rashid, the sous chef, who had been part of the household staff before her arrival. From the beginning, he had been cold towards her, barely disguising his resentment at her presence. "Mr. Al-Rashid has always preferred traditional Arabic cuisine for these events," Rashid said, his tone clipped. "Perhaps it would be best if I handled the main course." Isabella felt her temper flare. "Thank you for the suggestion, Rashid, but I have the menu under control. Your assistance in prep would be appreciated, though." The rest of the day passed in a flurry of preparation. Isabella decided to take Karim's challenge to heart, crafting a menu that blended her Latin American heritage with Middle Eastern flavors. The centerpiece would be a slow-roasted lamb shoulder, marinated in a blend of chilies, cumin, and preserved lemons, a dish that honored both cultures while creating something entirely new. As evening approached, Isabella changed into her crisp white chef's coat, taking a moment to gather herself before the dinner began. She could hear the murmur of voices from the dining room, the clinking of glasses as aperitifs were served. The first courses went out smoothly, a vibrant ceviche with pomegranate seeds followed by a delicate saffron soup. But as Isabella was putting the finishing touches on the main course, disaster struck. Rashid, carrying the platter of roasted lamb, stumbled. The dish crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces and sending the carefully prepared meat skidding across the tiles. For a moment, the kitchen fell silent. Then Rashid began apologizing profusely, his face a mask of panic. Isabella felt a surge of anger. Was this sabotage or a genuine accident? "Enough," she said sharply, cutting off Rashid's stream of apologies. "We don't have time for this. We need a new main course now." Her mind raced, considering their options. Then inspiration struck. "The spice-rubbed beef we were prepping for tomorrow, is it still marinating?" At Rashid's nod, Isabella sprang into action. "Get it out. We're changing course." For the next 20 minutes, the kitchen was a blur of controlled chaos. Isabella worked with laser focus, transforming the marinated beef into an improvised shawarma-style dish, complemented by quick pickled vegetables and a smoky eggplant puree. As the new main course was plated and sent out, Isabella held her breath. She had deviated far from the planned menu, taking a risk that could either impress or offend their important guests. The wait seemed interminable. Finally, Ahmed appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Al-Rashid requests your presence in the dining room, Miss Martinez." Heart pounding, Isabella removed her apron and smoothed her hair. As she walked towards the dining room, she steeled herself for whatever reception awaited. Whether triumph or disaster, she would face it with the same determination that had brought her this far. The moment of truth had arrived, and Isabella knew that her future in this gilded world hung in the balance. Isabella stepped into the opulent dining room, her heart racing beneath her composed exterior. The conversation at the table hushed as all eyes turned to her. Karim sat at the head, his expression inscrutable as he gestured for her to approach. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying easily across the room, "I'd like to introduce you to the culinary genius behind tonight's feast, Miss Isabella Martinez." To Isabella's surprise, applause broke out among the guests. The Minister of Finance, a portly man with a jovial smile, raised his glass in her direction. "My dear, that was one of the most memorable meals I've had in years. The fusion of flavors was simply extraordinary." Relief washed over Isabella, but it was short-lived as she caught Karim's intense gaze. He beckoned her closer, speaking in a low voice meant only for her ears. "You took quite a risk, changing the menu at the last minute." "Sometimes the greatest creations come from unexpected challenges," she replied, matching his quiet tone. A ghost of a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Indeed, we'll discuss this further later. For now, your adoring public awaits." The next hour passed in a whirlwind as Isabella fielded compliments and questions from the guests. She explained her culinary philosophy, the inspiration behind each dish, and even promised to share a few recipes. As the evening wound down, she retreated to the kitchen, exhausted but exhilarated. She found Rashid there, methodically cleaning up. His face was a mask of guilt and resentment. "I suppose you'll be telling Mr. Al-Rashid about my mishap," he said, not meeting her eyes. Isabella studied him for a moment. "Accidents happen in kitchens, Rashid. What matters is how we recover from them. Your quick thinking with the beef marinade saved the day." Surprise flashed across his face, followed by a flicker of something that might have been respect. "Thank you, chef," he said quietly, before returning to his task. Later that night, as Isabella was preparing to retire to her room, a knock came at her door. She opened it to find Karim standing there, his tie loosened and a bottle of expensive scotch in his hand. "I thought we might celebrate your triumph," he said, holding up the bottle. Isabella hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to let him in. She was acutely aware that this was the first time they had been truly alone together, away from the professional setting of the kitchen. Karim poured 2 glasses, handing one to Isabella. "To innovation in the face of adversity," he toasted. As they sipped the smooth liquor, Karim's gaze roamed around her suite, taking in the personal touches she had added. A colorful throw over the chair, a small potted herb garden on the balcony, a framed photo of her family. "You've made yourself at home," he observed. "I try to bring a piece of myself wherever I go," she replied. "It helps me stay grounded." Karim nodded thoughtfully. "And yet, you left your restaurant, your home, to come here. Why?" The question caught Isabella off guard. She considered her answer carefully. "Sometimes we need to leave what's comfortable to grow. This opportunity, it scared me, but it also excited me. I couldn't turn it down." "Fear and excitement often go hand in hand," Karim mused. He moved to the balcony, looking out over the moonlit ocean. "I've built my empire on that principle." Isabella joined him, curious about this rare moment of openness. "Is that why you have so many security measures? The forbidden West Wing?" Karim tensed slightly, his grip tightening on his glass. "My businesses sometimes make me targets. The West Wing contains sensitive information, things that need to be protected." "From what?" Isabella pressed, emboldened by the scotch and the intimate atmosphere. Karim turned to face her, his eyes dark and unreadable. "There are people in this world who would destroy everything I've built given the chance. I can't allow that to happen." The weight of unspoken words hung between them. Isabella sensed there was much more to the story, depths of complexity in this man she had barely begun to fathom. "You took a risk hiring me," she said softly. "How did you know you could trust me?" A small smile played at the corners of Karim's mouth. "I didn't. But sometimes, Miss Martinez, the greatest rewards come from the biggest gambles." He set down his empty glass and moved towards the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow I want you to start planning a new menu, something that pushes boundaries even further. Show me what you're truly capable of." As the door closed behind him, Isabella was left with a swirling mix of emotions. Excitement at the challenge ahead, curiosity about the secrets Karim guarded so closely, and an undeniable attraction that both thrilled and unsettled her. She stepped back out onto the balcony, breathing in the salt air. The mansion sprawled out before her, the forbidden West Wing a dark silhouette against the starry sky. Whatever mysteries it held, whatever dangers lurked in Karim's world, Isabella knew she was now irrevocably part of this story. As she drifted off to sleep that night, her dreams were a chaotic blend of sizzling pans, shadowy figures, and Karim's intense gaze. The coming days would test her in ways she couldn't imagine, pushing her to her limits both professionally and personally. Little did she know that the true challenges were only just beginning. The following weeks saw Isabella pushing herself to new culinary heights. Each day brought fresh challenges as Karim's demands grew more exacting. He hosted a succession of high-profile guests, diplomats, business tycoons, even a few discreet celebrities, and each dinner had to outshine the last. Isabella threw herself into her work, experimenting with exotic ingredients and daring flavor combinations. She drew inspiration from her travels, her heritage, and the rich tapestry of Middle Eastern cuisine surrounding her. The kitchen became her canvas, and food her art. One evening, as she was putting the finishing touches on a delicate saffron and rosewater panna cotta, Karim entered the kitchen. He moved with his usual quiet intensity, but there was an air of distraction about him. "Is everything all right?" Isabella asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. Karim's gaze snapped to her as if he'd forgotten she was there. "Yes, of course. I just received some unsettling news. Nothing for you to worry about." But Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Over the past month, she'd grown attuned to Karim's moods, learning to read the subtle shifts in his demeanor. This was more than just everyday business stress. "Karim," she said softly, setting down her piping bag, "I know I'm just your chef, but if there's anything I can do to help." He studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he let out a heavy sigh. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing towards the door that led to the gardens. As they strolled through the moonlit paths, the scent of night-blooming jasmine filling the air, Karim remained silent. Isabella waited patiently, sensing he needed time to gather his thoughts. Finally he spoke. "What I'm about to tell you must remain in the strictest confidence. Do you understand?" Isabella nodded, her curiosity piqued. "My business empire. It's not just about real estate and development," Karim began. "I've been working on a revolutionary clean energy technology. Something that could change the world, reduce our dependence on fossil fuels." Isabella's eyes widened. This was certainly not what she had expected. "But there are powerful people who don't want this technology to see the light of day," he continued, his voice low and intense. "People who would do anything to stop it. That's why security is so tight here. That's why the West Wing is off limits. It contains my research lab." "That's incredible, Karim," Isabella breathed. "But why are you telling me this?" He turned to face her, his expression grave. "Because I believe there's a traitor in my organization, someone feeding information to my enemies, and I need someone I can trust." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air between them. Isabella felt a mix of emotions: surprise at his revelation, fear at the implications, and a surge of warmth at the trust he was placing in her. "How can I help?" she asked without hesitation. A ghost of a smile touched Karim's lips. "For now, just be vigilant. Watch for anything unusual, anyone acting suspiciously. Your position in the kitchen gives you unique access and perspective." As they made their way back to the house, Isabella's mind was reeling. She had come here to cook, to push her culinary boundaries. Now she found herself embroiled in what sounded like a high-stakes corporate espionage plot. Over the next few days, Isabella found herself viewing the household with new eyes. She noticed Ahmed's furtive phone conversations, Rashid's occasional disappearances during prep time, even Mrs. Hassan's late-night trips to the West Wing for cleaning. But it was during a lavish dinner party that things came to a head. Isabella was in the kitchen overseeing the plating of the main course when she heard a commotion from the dining room. Raised voices, the sound of breaking glass, and then, most alarmingly, what sounded like a gunshot. Her heart racing, Isabella rushed to the door, only to find it locked from the outside. She pounded on it, calling out, but there was no response. The sounds from beyond grew more chaotic, shouting, the crash of furniture being overturned. Frantically, Isabella searched for another way out. Her eyes fell on the small door that led to the service corridor, and potentially to the West Wing. She knew the consequences of entering the forbidden area, but with possible danger on the other side of the locked door, she felt she had no choice. Taking a deep breath, Isabella pushed open the service door and stepped into the unknown. The corridor was dimly lit and eerily quiet compared to the chaos she'd heard from the dining room. She moved swiftly, her chef's shoes silent on the polished floor. As she approached the entrance to the West Wing, Isabella hesitated. Once she crossed this threshold, there would be no going back. Whatever secrets lay beyond, whatever dangers lurked in Karim's world, she was about to become irrevocably entangled in them. With a silent prayer, she pushed open the door and stepped into the heart of Karim's hidden world, ready to face whatever awaited her on the other side. The West Wing was a stark contrast to the opulent areas of the mansion Isabella had grown accustomed to. Sterile white corridors stretched before her, lined with locked doors and security cameras. The air hummed with the sound of advanced technology hidden behind those secure entrances. Isabella moved cautiously, her culinary instincts on high alert as she navigated this unfamiliar territory. The sounds of commotion from the dining room were muffled here, but still audible, a reminder of the urgency of her mission. As she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with a figure hurrying in the opposite direction. To her shock, she recognized Rashid, his usually impeccable chef's white stained with what looked unsettlingly like blood. "You!" Rashid exclaimed, his eyes wide with panic. "You're not supposed to be here." Before Isabella could react, Rashid shoved her against the wall, his forearm pressing against her throat. "I can't let you ruin everything," he hissed. Isabella's training kicked in. Years of working in high-pressure kitchens had honed her reflexes. She brought her knee up sharply, catching Rashid in the stomach. As he doubled over, gasping, she seized the opportunity to break free. "Rashid, what have you done?" she demanded, keeping her distance as he struggled to regain his breath. "You don't understand," he wheezed. "Karim's technology. It's too dangerous. It has to be destroyed." The pieces began to fall into place in Isabella's mind. "You're the traitor," she realized. "You've been feeding information to Karim's enemies." Rashid's face twisted with a mix of anger and desperation. "They're not enemies, they're saviors. Do you have any idea what Karim's energy source could do in the wrong hands? It could level cities, destroy entire nations." Isabella's mind reeled. Could Karim's clean energy technology truly be so destructive? Or was this propaganda fed to Rashid by those who stood to lose from its success? Before she could press for more information, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the corridor. Rashid's eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape route. "It's over, Rashid," came Karim's voice, cold and commanding. He appeared at the end of the hallway, flanked by security personnel. His normally impeccable appearance was disheveled, a cut above his eye bleeding freely. Rashid made a desperate lunge, reaching for something in his pocket. Isabella, acting on pure instinct, tackled him to the ground. They grappled on the floor, Rashid's fingers closing around a small device. "No," Isabella cried, recognizing it as some sort of detonator. With all her strength, she wrenched it from his grasp, flinging it down the hallway. Security swarmed in, subduing Rashid. As he was led away, he fixed Isabella with a haunted look. "You don't know what you've done," he said, his voice breaking. "You've doomed us all." In the aftermath, as medical personnel tended to the injured and police secured the scene, Isabella found herself in Karim's private study. The room was a blend of old-world charm and cutting-edge technology. Antique bookshelves housed leather-bound volumes alongside holographic displays. Karim poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, handing one to Isabella. "You saved more than just my life tonight," he said, his voice grave. "You saved years of work, research that could change the world for the better." Isabella sipped the drink, letting its warmth spread through her. "Rashid seemed to think differently," she said carefully. "He was convinced your technology was a weapon." Karim's expression darkened. "A common tactic of those who fear change, spread disinformation, twist the truth. My energy source could revolutionize how we power our world, freeing us from dependence on fossil fuels. But it would also disrupt some very powerful industries." He moved to a wall safe, entering a complex code. From it, he withdrew a small glowing cylinder. "This is what they were after," he explained. "The core of my clean energy reactor. In the right hands, it could provide limitless clean power. In the wrong hands, it could be weaponized," Isabella finished, understanding dawning. Karim nodded solemnly. "Which is why its existence must remain a secret for now, until we can ensure it will be used only for its intended purpose." Isabella felt the weight of this new knowledge settle on her shoulders. She had entered Karim's world as a chef, seeking to push her culinary boundaries. Now she found herself entangled in a web of scientific breakthroughs, corporate espionage, and world-changing potential. As the adrenaline of the evening's events began to fade, a new feeling took its place, a mix of excitement and trepidation at the role she now played in Karim's grand vision. "What happens now?" she asked, meeting his intense gaze. Karim's lips curved into a small smile. "Now, my dear Isabella, we change the world, one dish and one scientific breakthrough at a time." As dawn broke over the mansion, casting golden light across the tumultuous scene, Isabella knew that her life had irrevocably changed. The kitchen would always be her first love, but now she had a taste for something more: the thrill of discovery, the weight of world-altering secrets, and the intoxicating presence of a man who walked the line between visionary and danger. Little did she know, the true test of her newfound role in Karim's world was yet to come. In the weeks following the attack, life at the mansion took on a surreal quality. On the surface, Isabella's routine remained largely unchanged. She still spent her days in the kitchen, creating culinary masterpieces for Karim's high-profile guests. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a new undercurrent of tension and excitement thrummed through every interaction. Karim had taken Isabella into his confidence, sharing more details about his groundbreaking energy technology. She found herself fascinated by the potential applications, her mind racing with possibilities. Her background in chemistry, a necessity for any serious chef, allowed her to grasp the basics of the science involved, and Karim seemed to delight in explaining the more complex aspects to her. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the moonlit ocean, Karim turned to her with an intense expression. "Isabella, I have a proposition for you." She raised an eyebrow, curious. "Another one? The last one changed my life quite dramatically, if you recall." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Indeed, but I believe this one will be even more revolutionary. He leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. I want to combine our areas of expertise, your culinary genius with my clean energy technology. Isabella's brow furrowed in confusion. I'm not sure I follow. How could cooking possibly relate to your energy source? Think about it, Karim said, his eyes alight with excitement. My technology can generate immense amounts of clean energy in a compact form. What if we could harness that to create the ultimate cooking apparatus? A stove that never needs refueling, that can reach temperatures previously unattainable in a home kitchen, that can be precisely controlled down to the fraction of a degree. As he spoke, Isabella's mind began to race with the possibilities. Such a device could revolutionize not just high-end cuisine, but could have profound implications for sustainable cooking in developing nations. But there's more, Karim continued. I believe we can use the principles of my energy technology to create new methods of food preservation, eliminating the need for harmful chemicals or energy-intensive refrigeration. Imagine being able to keep food fresh for months or even years without freezing or canning. Isabella felt a surge of excitement. This was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of, a true fusion of culinary art and cutting-edge science. I'm in, she said without hesitation. Where do we start? The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Isabella split her time between the kitchen and Karim's state-of-the-art laboratory in the West Wing. She worked alongside brilliant scientists and engineers, bringing her unique perspective as a chef to the development process. There were setbacks, of course. The first prototype of the infinite stove, as they had dubbed it, overheated catastrophically, nearly burning down the test kitchen. The initial attempts at the new preservation technology left test samples with an unpleasant metallic aftertaste. But with each failure came new insights, and slowly but surely they began to make progress. Isabella found that her culinary intuition, honed over years in professional kitchens, often provided solutions that the scientists hadn't considered. As they worked closely together, Isabella found her feelings for Karim deepening. His passion for innovation, his unwavering commitment to making the world better, and yes, his undeniable charisma, all combined to create an irresistible attraction. But she hesitated to act on these feelings, unsure of how it might complicate their professional relationship. One night, after a particularly successful test of the preservation technology, Karim insisted on celebrating. He led Isabella to a part of the mansion she had never seen before, a hidden rooftop garden with a breathtaking view of the coastline. A small table had been set up, laden with dishes that Isabella recognized as her own creations, perfectly recreated. Karim poured 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to her. To revolutionizing the culinary world, he toasted, his eyes never leaving hers. As they dined under the stars, the conversation flowed easily between them, touching on their hopes for the project, their backgrounds, their dreams for the future. In that moment, the lines between employer and employee, between partners in innovation, began to blur. Isabella, Karim said softly, reaching across the table to take her hand. I hope you know how much I value not just your skills, but you as a person. These past months, working so closely with you, they've changed me. Isabella felt her heart race, but before she could respond, a commotion from below shattered the moment. The sound of breaking glass and shouts echoed up from the mansion. Karim's expression hardened instantly. We're under attack, he said, pulling Isabella to her feet. We need to get to the safe room. As they raced through the mansion, alarms blaring and security personnel rushing past, Isabella's mind whirled. Who was attacking them? Was it related to the energy technology? And most pressingly, would they make it to safety in time? The night that had begun with such promise now teetered on the brink of disaster. As Karim pulled her into a hidden elevator, Isabella realized that once again her life was about to change dramatically. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for certain. Her days of being just a chef were long behind her. The elevator descended rapidly, its smooth motion belying the chaos above. Isabella's heart raced as she stood close to Karim in the confined space, the warmth of his body a stark contrast to the cold metal surrounding them. What's happening? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Karim's jaw was set, his eyes focused on the descending floor numbers. I believe our enemies have made their final move. They're after the core technology, and they're willing to destroy everything to get it. The elevator came to a stop, opening into a high-tech bunker that looked like something out of a spy movie. Screens lined the walls, showing various parts of the mansion. Isabella watched in horror as masked intruders swarmed through the rooms she had come to call home. "We're safe here," Karim assured her, moving to a central console. "But we need to act fast. They can't be allowed to get their hands on the reactor core." As Karim worked furiously at the computer, Isabella's chef's instincts kicked in. In the face of chaos, she had always found calm in the act of creation. "What can I do?" she asked, determined to be more than just a bystander. Karim looked up, a spark of inspiration in his eyes. "The preservation technology, it's not just for food. We can use it to secure the core, make it inaccessible to anyone but us." Understanding dawned on Isabella. The work they had done together, fusing culinary science with cutting-edge energy technology, could be the key to saving everything. They worked in tandem, Karim guiding the security protocols, while Isabella applied her knowledge of the preservation process. It was a delicate balance, too much power, and they risked destabilizing the core. Too little, and it wouldn't be secure enough. As they raced against time, alarms blaring around them, Isabella was struck by how seamlessly they worked together. It was like the perfect dance in a busy kitchen, each anticipating the other's moves, complementing each other's strengths. Finally, with seconds to spare, they activated the protocol. On the screens, they watched as the reactor core was enveloped in a shimmering field of energy. The same technology they had developed to keep food fresh was now protecting the most valuable scientific breakthrough of the century. The intruders, reaching the lab, found themselves unable to penetrate the shield. Their frustration was palpable even through the security feeds. As the danger passed and security forces regained control of the mansion, Isabella felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. She slumped against the console, the adrenaline leaving her system. Karim moved to her side, gently taking her hand. "We did it," he said softly. "Together." Isabella looked up at him, seeing not just the powerful businessman or the brilliant scientist, but the man she had come to know over these intense months, a man of passion, vision, and surprising vulnerability. "Karim," she began, her voice thick with emotion. "I never expected any of this when I accepted your offer to be your chef, but now I can't imagine my life any other way." He pulled her close, his dark eyes intense. "Nor can I, Isabella. You've brought more than just culinary expertise to my world. You've brought warmth, creativity, and a perspective I never knew I needed. In the kitchen, in the lab, and in my life, we're stronger together." As their lips met in a kiss that felt both inevitable and exhilarating, Isabella knew that this was just the beginning. They had created something revolutionary, not just in technology, but in the fusion of their lives and passions. In the days that followed, as they worked to rebuild and strengthen their defenses, Isabella and Karim began to plan for the future. Their vision expanded beyond just revolutionizing cooking and energy. They saw the potential to address global hunger, to bring sustainable power to remote areas, to change the very way humanity interacted with food and energy. The kitchen that had once been Isabella's whole world now felt like just the first step in an incredible journey. With Karim by her side, she was ready to take on challenges she had never dreamed of, to push the boundaries of what was possible. As they stood on the balcony of the rebuilt mansion looking out over the ocean, Karim turned to her with a smile. "So, chef," he said, a teasing lilt in his voice, "what's our next recipe for changing the world?" Isabella laughed, her heart full of love and excitement for the future. "I'm not sure," she replied, squeezing his hand, "but I know it'll be the adventure of a lifetime." The sun set over the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. It was a fitting backdrop for the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Isabella and Karim had found in each other not just love, but a partner in innovation, in dreams, and in the relentless pursuit of a better world. Their story, like the perfect dish, was a blend of unexpected ingredients, danger, passion, creativity, and unwavering determination. And like all great recipes, it promised to leave a lasting impression on all who encountered it.